All right, welcome back to another episode of Cameo Podcast. Once again, sponsored by my friends over at Ready at Door, which I've used a few times. So far, I've been getting pizza because I am a pizza fiend, and if you are also a pizza fiend, please have $5 off your first order from Ready at Door. Use the coupon code Cameo. If you're listening to this, hopefully you know how to spell Cameo, but if you don't, it's Kameo. And they will deliver food to you pretty much anywhere in Kamloops, all the way out to Rayleigh, right? So they go farther than Skip the Dishes. They're also local developers, local businesses. More money stays in town, which I think is super important, as you might know if you have listened to me before rant and rave of how important it is to have money stay in this community. Now, my next guest, I reached out to very early on in the project, and he actually wasn't in Kamloops at the time. He's a bit of a social butterfly. He would drive into Kamloops and put on pop-up hikes, and grew a hiking group that my wife and I first attended, and then Josh and I have kept connected ever since. So it's Josh of, I don't know, Josh of Adventure Kamloops, Josh of Hiking Addiction, Josh Hiker. Who is Josh Hogan?
Right. Okay. Well, I don't even know where to begin. Maybe a bit with my origins.
Well, you're back in Kamloops. You live in Kamloops
now. So I'm back in Kamloops after 8 years away in Kelowna. I tried a brief stint earlier this year going to Victoria, which really wasn't for me. It was too big city. I thought getting away to the island, all the fresh hiking would totally be my thing. I had really exhausted all the hiking, the restaurants, the culture, the people, everything in Kelowna, and I was starting to get really bored. And everyone's like, why leave Kelowna? You have the lake, you have the wineries. And when it comes down to it, I was looking for deeper connections with people. And Kelowna lifestyle is so fast-paced, same with Victoria, that people don't have the opportunity to really just relax. And I really wanted to come back to Kamloops for a long time.
Yeah, because you used to have a house here, I believe, years ago. You were telling me, because you've been playing in real estate. You're an entrepreneur. You're one of these. Are you a millennial? Are you considered a millennial?
Technically, yes, I think I am. I think it started 1980, somewhere in there. So I'm 84.
Yeah.
And so I liked the internet before it was cool. I started on a dial-up modem. I actually bought it from my parents. I borrowed the money from them. And they hated the idea. Well, my dad hated the idea of me having this modem. Like, why are we going to use this? The first internet that I had wasn't really the internet. It was a dial-up bulletin board system. And my friend had shown me his internet.
Is that intranet? Is that what that was back then?
No. It was like a bulletin board system, like a text, like a terminal-based, almost like DOS.
Okay.
I would log in, and I was really confused because I thought, I had seen like graphics and I'd seen web pages before. And I guess I had signed up for the wrong thing originally. So I got connected with Uniserve years ago, which was an internet provider, which I think is long gone now. And on 14.4 kbps, I started my software business with my buddy Ross way back in the day in 1994. And he recently passed away, but we had started Coingo Games and Pain Games together, which were essentially PowerPoint presentations done in a language called HyperCard and HyperTalk. And you would either progress to the next screen or you would die. So kind of a self-directed adventure game. And eventually in grade 10, I started getting more.
Oh, wow, you weren't even in high school at this point.
No, this was when I was really small. My parents were actually really worried about me because I was a huge introvert. My best friend Christian moved away in grade 1. And after that, I figured I was just done. I was like, okay, that's enough people, moving on. And I got into art, and I got into messing around with just glue and construction paper and just making a huge mess across the whole house. And of course loads of TV as a kid. And my mom's like, okay, well, he doesn't have friends, what are we going to do? She threw me in computer lessons, and this guy Jamie McMurray taught me how to use HyperTalk. And from there it sort of really spurred that interest. And from the time I was in grade 4 up until grade 10, I was completely glued to the computer, but didn't really have huge direction. I worked on the school webmaster team at Brookswood for a number of years. Redid a few of the website iterations, and then in grade 10 I learned a language called Real Basic back in the day, which then became Real Studio and then Zojo today. And thankfully the language is stuck around because it allowed me to develop apps for Mac, for PC, for Linux, and now iOS with the same language without having to learn a whole new language. And my buddy at the time, Shane, he came up to me one day, and we had just finished an assignment in class, and me and Shane, like, we were ahead of most of the students in class because we spent all of our free time on the computer, and the teacher more or less let us do what we wanted. Shane said to me he wanted an alarm clock that would wake him up with his music, and this is before the days of iTunes. This is I think we were using an app called SoundJam to play all of our MP3s. And this is also in an era where playing an MP3 would use most of your processing power on your computer, so your computer would bog down. Anyway, so he wanted to wake up to his music, and at this time in our lives, everyone had a computer in their bedroom, and it wasn't a big deal to leave it on next to you, because chances are your cell phone wasn't playing anything better than a MIDI. So I slaved away for a few weeks and went on to a whole bunch of internet bulletin boards trying to figure out how to create an app that could use existing libraries to play MP3s, and got it working. And I figured, why not throw it online, see what happens. And I got my first $2 in the mail. And I was
In the mail?
In the mail. Someone had sent in a license, a registration for it. And I was like, are you kidding me? And this is at a time where I'm sending off my software manually through email and up to FTP sites, to Mac user groups, stuff like that. I never thought it would get picked up by anyone. It got thrown around the internet a bunch. And the Mac community back then was super niche. You don't have the tens of thousands of developers that you have now. There was a handful. And so I was like, holy crap, people are actually buying software. I couldn't believe it, because I had just pirated everything up until that age, because I didn't even have a credit card yet. So I had to figure out some way to get my apps. And I thought, well, why not make an address book, make a password storage tool, all these sorts of things that didn't exist for Mac yet, or had kind of crappier PC ports of. And people loved it. I got featured by a whole bunch of Mac magazines. I got cover mounted in
What year was this? Or
we're talking 2000, 2001.
Oh wow.
Mac Addict magazine, Mac World, Mac Life.
So is this when like the iMac, like the colored iMac came out?
That just had come out, and Apple was back on its rise again after Steve Jobs came back. And
that's a good wave. You got a really good time.
I got in an incredibly good time, and the reason being is because there were so few developers. Apple was growing really quickly, and the developers couldn't learn the Mac programming language quickly enough. So I grew with Apple for the years that followed, all the way up until about 2011. My sales were just going through the roof. I started partnering with different businesses. We went back to my history and developed a few games. And games were never money makers for me, and I thought, why not try this again? So I brought a whole bunch of my old high school buddies on board, elementary school friends as well. And we created almost like a knockoff of Bloodsuckers, which was a game where there's a man's hand at the bottom of the screen, and all these bugs come trickling down. And you have to smack them with a hand to kill them before they suck out all your blood. And I thought, let's create Pandora's Pests. And so one of the partners that I had through my dealings with Mac Software did all the music for us. Ross and Al worked on sound effects and all the graphics and sprite animations. I worked with Abraham doing the programming. And in the end, we had a similar concept with an arm at the bottom of the screen, way more bugs, and then also had a whole bunch of weapons. So you can go kill these bugs, not with just your hand, but with tasers, with fly swatters, with gas, with a flamethrower. And, we spent almost $15,000 developing this game.
Jesus Christ.
One of the things that was most important to me, the biggest lesson I learned from that is, no matter what generation you're developing video games for, it is one of the hardest genres of app to make any sort of profit on. So after all that time and all those months of designing that app and all the money, we made about $300 in sales. It was horrible. So I went back to doing productivity software. And
were you marketing it though in that 1500?
Well, that's the thing. So the one of the best ways to get marketing traction in the Mac world at the time was through partnering with different promotional sites like MacZot, Mac Update. Version Tracker used to be a site that I think got bought out by CNET and Download.com in the long run. And so they would promote your product at 50% off, so there was no upfront cost to me. It was all revenue-based, and I didn't really have the financial backing to approach any of the big guys with a marketing campaign. And it just never really caught on. And so few games do. You see these developers that put out hundreds of games these days that actually are probably a lot better than Pandora's Pests was. And they just flop. And they'll have like one, if they catch on, they go viral, you get something like Angry Birds. And it just takes the right amount of people talking about it, because no matter how much marketing you put into it, unless you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars, good luck. But yeah, and I realized that as Apple was growing and there was more Mac developers over time, that it wasn't sustainable long term, and there's no way I could keep up. No matter how many apps I put out, no matter how much marketing I put into it, I didn't have the business expertise. And when I was 21, my mom co-signed for my very first place in real estate. So I bought a condo over in Burnaby, and then moving away from Kamloops in 2010 December, I had a house up in Pineview, and I had a girlfriend down in Penticton, and we compromised, and we said, okay, let's try out Kelowna. So I bought a house in Kelowna, but was really trying to push it and see if the banks would let me do it because of the good income years with my business. And they let me to retain my old house as rental income and then buy a second property over in Kelowna. And I was blown away. I was like, wow, I have all this mortgage, and this house is paying for itself, the renters. And so I lived in Kelowna, and for the first few months, I was miserably depressed. I found it very hard to break into a new social circle and meet people in such a busy city when I was so used to Kamloops lifestyle. And
so you grew up in Kamloops then?
Well, not necessarily. No, I was in Kamloops for 4 years. I grew up in Langley.
Okay.
And so I created a hiking group in Kelowna called Hiking Addiction. And I would take people out on free weekend hikes. And it created this really good community of people that were all like-minded into fitness and friendship. And through that, I started hosting other events, like my Shared Canvas Art Night, like Dark Techno Hide and Seek, and a Cook Night, and a variety of others. And I rebranded and created a separate group called Adventure Kelowna. And that was sort of the template for all the other cities that I would go to. So instead of just hikes, there would be social events for free for everyone, or at cost if we went out in town for a wings night or something to that effect. And it's been incredibly positive. But of course, not very much on the revenue front.
Yeah, because you're pretty aggressive in growing the groups by putting cash up and paying for people to invite friends, and so you did the Adventure Kamloops one. You grew it to like 2,000 members or so in 3 weeks?
In 2 months now, since I started the group. We're now at 1,800 people. And I found one of the best ways to grow any group online is just run a contest. Say, hey, at 50 of your friends, have a chance at $10, $50, whatever it is. Yeah. You can spend thousands of dollars on Facebook ads, and you're not going to see any return on that. It's
Facebook
ridiculous.
Groups are where the actual investment is, because there's real social interaction, right? Yeah. You have new people introducing themselves, right? And you encourage it and you moderate it, and it's a lot of work. And I'm slowly trying to build my little group, but I don't put any funds into it just yet. But it's been interesting watching you grow, because I've learned a lot from you and Hiking Addiction, watching you then go and replicate this in Victoria and now again. You've done it multiple times. Like it's a proven model at this point.
Oh, it really works. And above and for me, the upfront costs now are so minimal. Whether it's me buying a few canvases, a bit of art supplies, a few groceries for a cook night. But people love community. They want a sense of belonging. And now in a world of social media where we have hundreds of people, thousands of people on our Facebook accounts and more on Instagram, ironically, people are the loneliest they have ever been in their lives, because of all the shallow and sensational interactions they're having with the likes and comments that once they've digested that notification badge are now gone. They're not meaningful interactions. And so providing a forum where people can meet in real life, that's not a Tinder date, that's not a Plenty of Fish date, that's totally casual and just friendship oriented and for the community and free, people can come out in a healthy way, make new friends in a way that I did, or people did, maybe not I, being so antisocial growing up, but in the 90s, on a human level. And people love it. It gets them. Everyone's out of the box, right? Like out of their element. And I think that's one of the most important things about it. People come to art night never having painted before. People come to the hiking group.
Sometimes without a water bottle, which
yeah, I mean, a girl shows up in sandals one day. I'm like, "Are you serious? Did you read the frequently asked questions?" But everyone comes with good spirits, good intentions. They're at a point in their life where that window is open for them to make new friends. Yeah. And there's a study done about Dunbar's number. I'm not sure if you've heard of that.
No, I haven't.
Dunbar's number was, I think these are the stats and how it works. A study done on primates, and it was, I think, 5, 15, and 150. So it shows that in these circles of mammals that you can have 5 close friends a social circle that's relatively active of about 15 people, and be generally aware of maybe a name and a job or associations with 150 people. And beyond that, it breaks down. You can only truly maintain about 15 healthy social circle friends. But a lot of people have those friends they had since they were children. And then now that we're all growing up through our 20s and our 30s, people are moving away, they're having children, and people are like, well, where do I meet people?
Yeah.
Besides at the office.
Making friends is tough.
Oh, it's incredibly challenging. So when you're able to come together in a group, do a new activity that both of you have never done together, and fail at it, the failure is something that bonds you. And so when you can both laugh about the situation that you're in, you create new common ground. So besides the host that you may or may not already know, you're creating an experience that you go back and look on. It's creating those new experiences that people have never had before. That'll create lasting memories.
Where did this passion for community come from? Because like you said, you grew up rather antisocial. Mm-hmm. Where did the switch happen?
Well, I don't want to say it's alcohol, but I think it was alcohol. In the beginning, it was. I had gone through a very bad breakup in, when was it now? End of 2008. And a long-term 4-year girlfriend of mine discovered that she was a lesbian. And the relationship ended. And
is she still a lesbian?
She's now married to a woman. Yeah.
Okay.
And very happily so.
At least that wasn't just a cop out.
No, exactly. You know, I'm not that horrible to date. At least I hope not. But yeah. So after that, I kind of sunk to an all new low. I had never been drunk in my life before. I was not an alcohol drinker, and I went out and joined Plenty of Fish at the time, and went on a few dates and fell into a group of various different social circles, including one with Brandon Dalmore, who I think it was originally from Grand Forks and moved to Kamloops for school. And Brandon quickly became a role model. He was a super social extrovert. He was the guy who originally created the concept of Art Night that I host now. Not to be confused with a paint night, which is hosted professionally around Canada and internationally, I think.
Yep.
We get together, we share a canvas. There's 20 of us, 30 of us. There's 4 or 5 canvases floating around, 4 or 5 people per canvas, and every 20 minutes we change spots until the work is complete. End of the night, you get a vote in your favorite canvas. Because there's only 5 of them, a winner gets drawn and goes home with that person. But a great opportunity to bond, fail, and laugh together, and be creative at the same time. Like, painting's so therapeutic. I mean, those paint by numbers things too. I mean, you can buy books on those now. But Brandon was that role model. He was the guy always hosting events. And granted, yes, I got wickedly drunk the first year that I started drinking. And I found I went from being this workaholic teen and not really knowing who I was beyond work into finally discovering my social life for the first time since grade 1. And that was a really big turning point for me. And that ex-girlfriend that I had was a huge hiker. And during that whole relationship, I had avoided hiking. My dad had gone hiking with me as a kid, and it wasn't really something that I had done in my adult life. But I find that after a breakup, you incorporate the best bits of the person you had just been with as you go on with your life, because you want to hold on to the best parts of that relationship and turn them into you. And I got incredibly big into hiking, and that is what started a hiking addiction in Kelowna. But I got my roots here in Kamloops during that 1 year before I moved, doing the hills over in Bachelor Heights, which are excruciating to hike up, and most people drive up and have their fire pit, but you sort of get the idea. My one friend, Isaac, actually, the first few times we were doing our test runs hiking, would go up, black out on the hike going up. My buddy Ross coming down. It was one of the funniest hikes we did together. Lost control. I have a picture that I still laugh at today of him flailing. Like, it looks like his muscles are almost concave with the wind force coming down, facing up against him, and just crashed and rolled into a big boulder.
See, your introduction, you introduced me to Battle Bluffs because I didn't know that existed, and like maybe it's just my ignorance. But after you introduced me to Battle Bluffs, and then like it's been what, 2-3 years we've known each other now. 3 years, 2 years.
I think
for sure, 2.5 years at least.
Yeah, it has been about 2.5. Yeah.
There's just been this crazy insurgence of people going to Battle Bluffs. Maybe it's because I see it now on social media or whatever it be, but or information is easier to disseminate because of social media or whatever it be. But it's just like, man, you started that in my opinion. And then you took us to Dewdrop, which I then showed to my other friend, and we ran it trail running and whatever be. And now it's, you know, kind of like one of these like trail running spots to go and crush out 25K and get a really good vertical gain, right? So like your impact in Kamloops, as far as I'm concerned, is seen every single weekend on Instagram with the classic battle bluffs.
Well, I hate to take credit for it. It's been there for a very long time.
It has, but that was my introduction, and then you know, maybe it's like I said, my ignorance, but part of what interests me about you though is that world of micro influencers kind of world where you lived in Kelowna, right? Where you come here and you make a splash, you know, in 1,800 people's lives pretty quickly, you know. But you also talked against kind of social media or whatever it be, right? Like what are your thoughts of like living this weird paradox? Because I'm in the same boat as you right now, where I hate social media, but I love it, and I know I have to use it, but I don't want to. You know, what do you think the next honest step is for you or for social media?
I think what we're going to see as time evolves, like we're very much at the infancy of social media right now. People are still discovering what's appropriate. We're developing etiquette for social media. We're discovering healthy amounts of social media in our lives. And when Facebook first came out, when MySpace was around, and all these other sites in their infancy, it was new, and people got addicted to it. And it was fun, and it was social, and it was a new way to interact. And as time went on, and people got introduced to it as they were growing up, they didn't go through the lack of social media area that I was born into, they're now developing the ground rules and what it means to have a healthy interaction with social media. And of course, you have the few that go to the extreme, and people that, like in kids today, that are just so glued to it. But it's like the cell phone. Originally, I was glued to mine, and I was playing games on it, and I was staring at my phone around the clock. And now my cell phone isn't a toy. My cell phone's a tool. It's a necessity for business. It's a necessity to life. And it's no longer the focal point of my existence. It's a tool to accessorize the rest of my life. And I think that's the important thing to remember as people get older and we grow out of our teen years, is finding that balance and making sure that social media is a component that either helps you grow your business, stay in touch with friends, but so that it isn't the focal point of your day, that it doesn't consume your life.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I was like, first of all, have you ever had a regular job? That's a no.
I wouldn't call it a regular job. I worked in internet marketing in 2004 in downtown Vancouver.
Okay.
For a year and a half. And I was doing subject lines for emails, and it was brutal. It was
just A/B testing subject lines?
To see what would get through spam filters. And it was miserable. So for 8 hours a day, I was hammering out line after line after line. And I was looking outside, looking at how sunny and beautiful it was. And my software business was making about the same amount of money that the day job was. And I was like, you know what? If I dedicated all of my daytime to just my software business, I bet you I could more than double this. And I did as time went on. You lose the stability and the regular income. And I mean, benefits are such a joke. I mean, when you're an entrepreneur and you're making enough money, the freedom that you have, the money you can make, benefits are such a minuscule part of it. Now I'll sit at a coffee shop and work. I'll be in Hawaii on a vacation and be working on a beach. The disadvantage, the hardest part about being an entrepreneur is finding the motivation every day to get up despite the failures and successes that you've had to continue on. There will be a lot of setbacks in your life, and I've had a lot of criticism over the years and a lot more failures than successes, but you don't know until you try. And not every success story from an entrepreneur, and you see this all the time on Facebook ads, is going to work for you and your lifestyle.
Oh,
or work for you and your
Facebook
business.
ads. Oh my gosh.
These guys making, millions or,
or,
$50,000 a month, right?
Do you want to learn how to take back your lifestyle? These network marketing digital packages, it drives me nuts.
Yeah, and it worked for them because they're preying on people that want to make a change that don't know how.
Totally.
So that's what their model is. They don't actually want to help you become a success. They just want to sell more of their own package.
It's like network marketing, but worse because you don't actually get a physical product. You just get a subscription, and then you try and subscribe more. I get it, but I hate it. I got in a fight with some guy who was in Costa Rica who was one of those types of people. And I'm like, I look at his page. I'm like, dude, you just bought 5,000 fake Facebook followers. He's like, yeah, so what? I'm like, what are you peddling, man? He's like, oh, but I'm in Costa Rica, blah, blah, blah. It's like, all right, whatever. But yeah, what are your thoughts of like this new resurgence of like entrepreneurship? Like there's this trend, right? Mm-hmm. And I get myself caught up in it, but I'm also actively practicing it, mm-hmm. right? You know, what are your thoughts there?
Well, we have two schools of people in the world. There's leaders and there's followers. And not everyone's meant to be a leader. But there's a lot of pressure and a lot of interest in it. A lot of people want to be that self-directed leader that runs their own business. But they don't have the drive, they don't have the motivation yet, or they haven't been able to find it in some way in their own lives. And while I think they can find it, there's also a lot of people that don't want to. Some people just want to go out, work a 9-to-5 job and go home. But you look at countries like India, where everybody's an entrepreneur. So few people work for other businesses unless they're really big businesses and tech firms. And I think that's a model that we're heading towards in abundance in more developed countries. And I think it's a fantastic thing. It gives people the opportunity to pursue their dreams, win and lose on their own terms, and if they're strong enough, succeed. And I think there's a huge opportunity for success. I have a lot of friends that are phenomenally creative that over the years have had a 9-to-5 job, lost their passion and their interest, and they're just waiting on the next paycheck out of fear for losing that job, and they won't pursue anything else because they're so stuck in this cycle. And I took that leap in 2004, and I wish more people could do that. In your spare time, if you have an interest in music, if you have an interest in computers or adventure tourism, do it on the side. Don't sit at home watching other people's success videos. Learn, research, find the skills that you need, and see if you can do it. Start your blog, monetize on some affiliate links, whatever it takes, and just give it a shot and see if you can start generating that first sale like I did, and you'll find a whole new sense of welcoming and acknowledgement. And you'll find yourself constantly reassuring yourself that you will be fine. The harder you work, the more money you will make, and it will happen.
Yeah. And yes, to add on what Josh said, you can do affiliate sales without joining Global Affiliate Zone, which GAZ, I see it everywhere these days. Now let's flip the script a little bit. You're in town, you bought a house, you're going to TRU for psych, but how long were you in Egypt?
All right.
Or is Israel?
So I spent the last 3 years of my life traveling. I had at many points been home for no longer than 3 months at a time. And in December of before I get into the Egypt and Israel story, because it's all sort of ties together. Let's see here. Actually, was it 2 winters ago? I was in Thailand, and I went with a friend of mine. And the middle of the trip, she got really sick. And I was getting pretty miserable, and we were falling behind on my rigid schedule. Because when I go somewhere, I kind of have that FOMO philosophy that I want to see the TripAdvisor top 20 and the blog top 20 and make sure I get everything done so I don't have to go back to that country because I feel like I've done it properly. And so in 3.5 weeks, I barely slept, and I did Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Singapore, and was just dying on the way home. But it got me so addicted to doing countries like that I was like, okay, I need a change in my life. I need to do something different. And I didn't want to be a computer programmer for the rest of my life, and I didn't want to just be doing rental homes for the rest of my life. The rental home business, everyone's like, oh, these homeowners, that own so many homes, luxury living, passive income. It is not. It was one of the hardest things that I've done in my life, trying to be the most pleasant in the most unpleasant situations with tenants, the tenancy board, house problems, and repairs. It was very challenging. I eventually consolidated on that. But I was looking at school, and I was like, okay, what do I want to do with my life? What's a passion of mine? And I've, let's be honest, been Indiana Jones for the last 10 years running for Halloween. It's a horrible obsession. Yeah. And I thought, well, archaeology, done. Such an easy call. And I looked at the websites online, and I didn't take 4, provincially examinable courses in grade 12. I took 3. And so I couldn't get into many universities. And I was like, well, I just want to be on a dig site. I want to change history. What can I do? And I typed in, volunteer archaeological dig, yada, yada, yada. The first one that came up was at Khirbet El Mastera, and that's in Israel, just outside of the city of Jericho. And it's the spot in the Bible where Joshua fought the Battle of Jericho, marched around the city for 7 days, 7 nights with their ram's horns blew, the walls came tumbling down, and they went and slaughtered everyone, yada, yada, yada. But I'm like, Joshua, that's my name. This is the first dig. And lo and behold, the requirements to go, no credentials. Show up, pay the fee, and you can join us on the dig site. Train you on site. And I was like, holy crap, this is incredible. So I booked my ticket and applied. I got accepted, and it was supposed to be the graduating archaeological studies class, or anthro class, rather. And it was one student, I think, from that class, the professor's daughter, and another girl from a different program, and a whole bunch of other worldly volunteers. So I flew over to Israel, which, as everyone knows, it isn't exactly the safest place to go. But it's a risk worth taking. I thought, hey, there are so many archaeological digs here. We could really make history. We could actually change something. I could be on that dig where we discovered another set of Dead Sea Scrolls or something to that
I saw them once, actually, in Royal Ontario Museum. It was pretty neat.
Yeah. And so even if we didn't find anything, even just to say that I was there and that we could have had that impact was super cool.
Do you know how the original, the Dead Sea Scrolls were found?
In a cave.
In a cave by, a 7-year-old boy out of happenstance. So here you are looking for them, and it's... Sorry to burst your bubble, but continue.
Yeah, no, I mean, it could have been that easy, and it definitely wasn't. We went out into the blistering 40-degree sun, not a single cloud in sight. I mean, the Israelites, thousands of years ago would create these giant underground cisterns which would collect rainwater for the dry season. And June is definitely the dry season. So we set up our black tarp tent in the middle of the desert sand until the sun came up, set up camp, and just began digging and sifting and hacking away at rocks and trying to find something, anything of significance to prove the migratory patterns of the early Israelites. And biblical scholars, there's two theories that the early Israelites migrated from Jordan across the Jordan River and came to Jericho. The other school of thought is that they were escaping oppression from the Egyptian seaport of Jaffa. The Egyptian religion was very popular back in the day. And so, of course, the early Jews wanted to get the hell away from there. And so the other theory is that they roamed through the desert and were desperately looking for somewhere to settle, looking for the promised land. And they came across Jericho and moved in with them. So we were looking at this one nomadic site, digging, looking for artifacts of a direction of travel of some sort. And we found a whole bunch of pottery shards. We found goat bones, desert snails, one grinding stone, kind of a corral that was designed, I guess, to keep animals back in the day. But nothing really of consequence on that dig. But it's a 10-year project, and who knows? Maybe on year 9 they'll find something. But it was, I volunteered for the 1 week and spent the remaining of my vacation going through and visiting all the other important sites all through Israel. And that's everything from the gardens in Haifa right down to, I think it's Eilat on the very far south, and of course over to the Palestinian section. And don't even get me started on that. But on one of my last days there was a terrorist attack at the Damascus Gate. And the Damascus Gate is one of the entrances into the old city of Jerusalem. This is an Aladdin-style market where there's candy and foods, everything lined up in little boxes, and you barter with everyone as you go in. And this is right next to Dome of the Rock and the Wailing Wall, where the Jews go pray. Dome of the Rock's for the Muslims. And it was just a phenomenal experience to see all the different facets of history. And I was like, okay, well, I've gotten the Christian and the Muslim side of things. What about the other half of history? And the Bible doesn't include many components of Egypt at all. They reference even the Pharaoh at the time just as Pharaoh. I wanted the true history, the other missing piece to the puzzle. So I flew over to Egypt with a friend and did a self-guided tour, hired a private driver, and just went all over the place. And we were at this one temple, and it had actually been moved because they had flooded the Nile on purpose to build a whole bunch of hydroelectric dams and to retain water, because other countries along the Nile farther south will threaten to cut off the Nile, and it's their way of imposing political sanctions on other countries over there. But the temple had been moved brick by brick, upriver and over, and recreated. And there was a celebrity years ago that had gone there, and she paid something like 10 or 20,000 US dollars to have it to herself for the day. Because usually these tourist attractions are just swarming with tourists, right? Or at least it was the case until about 10 years ago. And about 10 years ago, they elected a new political party that took all the taxpayer dollars and everything else, put it all into military, took all the social programs away, garbage collection, and Egypt has been a bit of a mess. Now, it is a lot safer than Israel, granted, but at the same time, any tourist that goes to either of these countries has to be aware of petty theft, and that's huge, right? More than violent crime. I mean, I had psyched myself out so much before I went to Israel and Egypt, reading news reports of this the Coptic Christian bus that had just been bombed in Egypt. And unless you're participating in religious activities and extremist viewpoints, as a tourist, chances are pretty low. I mean, you're more likely to get hit in a road in New York than you are to get hurt in Israel. But yeah, this temple, we got into it, and it was virtually empty. So we got the royal treatment, the $10,000 treatment for free, because tourism in Egypt is at an all-time low right now. And if you can handle a little bit of garbage and you're not going to be a first world princess, then go do it. Because it was one of the coolest places that I've ever been in my life. Because a lot of the people, like most of the people in Egypt, don't follow the Egyptian religion anymore. They're all Muslim. And you can go into the pyramids, bribe the guard, and go lay in a sarcophagus if you want. Go ride a camel next to the pyramids, yeah. And while you probably shouldn't be doing those things, I guess technically they're forbidden, just to be next to those huge points of history.
Yeah.
And travel for me has been one of those things that has opened my eyes so much over time. And every time I come back from a trip, I am no longer the same person at all. I look back at the person I was when I began that trip a week, 2, 3 weeks ago, and I was like, wow, I can't believe I held that viewpoint. And a really good example of that was my India trip. I got paid to do a documentary, well, sort of paid. I got my flight and my flights and my hotels paid for, and I was to create this documentary, and I was getting royalties for all the copies of the video they would white label and resell. And over the course of 3.5 weeks and 17 flights, I recorded tons of footage and essentially documented what it was like for a Westerner to go through India. And it was unlike people go to Thailand and Cambodia to see poverty and to see the quote-unquote developing world. But India is a whole different story. People that I've talked to in Canada have this mystical vision of India with Thailand-style temples and just this deeply rooted spiritual people that are like singing hymns and so on and so forth. But it's not like that at all. Every day there is a struggle to survive. It's that entrepreneurial lifestyle where you make a sale, you don't, you eat or you don't. And a lot of people there are just fighting day by day. And the conditions just to breathe. I mean, you would never go hiking in India. I hate to sound spoiled and so first world, but I was looking for an oxygen bar because after 3 weeks there, every breath was a struggle. If you've been scuba diving before and you know that feeling of when you're having to suck in from the air tanks, that's what it feels like trying to breathe when you're not used to it in India. And the garbage everywhere, and not even being able to drink from 5-star hotel water from the faucets. It was a shock, more of a shock than any other country that I've been to, more than Israel, Egypt, Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, everywhere else. India was the country I felt that was experiencing the most amount of struggle, but they were some of the happiest people that I had met. So despite all the poverty and despair, they were still incredibly happy. And to me, that was very inspiring because when I came home and I saw all these people in Canada with all the possessions they could possibly want, all the followers they could possibly dream of, but they were miserable, it really made me realize how important community was, because that's what they have in India. There is such a tight group of people. Like every social circle is just this constant party, this constant friendship, and there's so much real world interaction.
Totally. I could see that with the people I meet who come from India here, right? They have their 2-3 friends and they're always together. And whenever I ask them, why'd you come over here? They're like, oh, it's for a better life. And I ask them often, why would you come to Kamloops when you already have a degree? Some of these Indian people have 2 degrees, and they're coming back to take a post-bac, like an additional degree on top of their degree, just because they have to get into the education system to come to Canada to get the visa, just for that better life. And I'm really amazed at their hustle, like that entrepreneurial spirit. Like it inspires me 100%. Well, we're at the 40-minute mark, and you were worried about 15-minute conversation, and we're
I guess I'm more of a rambler than I thought I was. Crap.
Yeah, what I have to say, because I haven't seen you in a few years, is I can tell you're not the same person, like at all. Like you're much. Maybe it's because we're in a different venue or setting or whatever be, right? But when I first met you, you're kind of like a social isolate. I don't like you're kind of like you create the social group, but you're also like the one charging up the mountain kind of by yourself about 15 feet from the rest of the pack. And now when you talk, right, you have a radio voice, you're super assertive, you know what you want to say, you're very articulate. Like I can see the change of all these years of traveling and what you've done, which is really interesting to me because I haven't had that opportunity as someone to interview someone I know and then seen their growth. So that's very, very cool to see. So since we're getting short on time because some social circle plans have already been made for the evening, where can people find out more information about what you're currently kind of doing online on Facebook? Or if people have questions, what would you like your group to develop into? Just chat about that if you could.
All right. So if people are looking to professionally reach out, they can go to joshhogan.com and contact me through my site there. And then you can read a little bit about my attempt at mayor over in Kelowna this year. You can also get linked up to my Facebook page and see my public posts that I've made there. But on a personal level, if you're interested in getting out, meeting new people, going on hikes, really developing some positive community in Kamloops, whether you're in the 20s and 30s group or not, come join us and say hello. And we're always doing anything from art night to hikes, right? And it really is a community that welcomes all. And we're not here to judge because we're all started at the same spot.
You had kids the other night, I think.
Yeah, so there's a few events. We're not always 19 plus. I mean, there's some events that are very kind of low key on the alcohol. If someone does BYOB, it's fine. Art night is definitely family friendly. You come together, you paint, you make a mess. I had a kids canvas set up. That was I think it was number 30 out of all the art nights that I've done now. I've done an equal
30.
30. And we've had I've kept a photo log of all the other ones. If people are curious to see what we've done over the last 8 years in Kelowna, go to adventurekelowna.org/gallery. But if you want to join the new version of the social club here in Kamloops, search for Adventure Kamloops, 2 words, forum, and join the group. Don't bother liking the page, that's fine, but join the group. You'll see it has the 1,800 people in it, and we're already organizing Wing Wednesday for next week over at the Pogmahone Irish Pub.
Yeah, I'm not sure when I'll get this out, I'll be honest. But
sorry, all right.
That's fine.
Yep.
Because I saw your post and I shared it. Like you did some hardcore research of all the different wing nights or social pub venues or whatever it be. So Josh is doing his research and he's always got people creating plans. You've done at least 2 or 3 escape nights in town already, and
there's a new trampoline park in town. I really want to get the group out doing that.
Jump 360.
I mean, yeah, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, they do dodgeball. They do leagues there. There's some interesting stuff. There's a climbing gym, of course, right? There's a lot going on in this town.
But more than anything else, I spent those 8 years in Kelowna mapping the whole Okanagan. And I had my brief stint here because I had thought about moving to Kamloops again 2 years ago. And that's why I had started up Hiking Addiction here in Kamloops and later rebranded to Adventure Kamloops because I thought a move was imminent. And then it just didn't quite happen yet. The timing wasn't right. But this spring, when we start the hiking group up again through Adventure Kamloops, it's going to be wild. I won't be taking you guys to Kenna Cartwright. There won't be any Peterson Creek. There won't be any Battle Bluffs. There'll be a lot more that people have never heard of.
Oh, awesome. Cool. Well, hopefully by then my baby fits her hiking pack. My parents are big hikers. They bought us one of those hiking backpacks. So we got a good one. Actually, she might start fitting it now. She might need to be a little bit heavier. But yeah, hopefully Kayla and I can get out and figure that out.
I'd love to torture you guys on some more hikes. It'd be great.
Oh, dude, I've run 2 ultra marathons. I can torture you now.
You'll be 15 steps ahead of me.
Yeah, but yeah, Josh, thanks for inviting me into your home to chat, and inviting, I guess, so many people into your home as well that you've never met. And yeah, you're doing some cool things, and thank you. I appreciate the conversation.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and thank you, audience, for listening. I truly appreciate every listen, every share, every like on the social world, because it does drive people to my podcast, which is where I do prefer to communicate. It is how I want to communicate to the world, because it's much more intimate. It's a little bit more real. I can't hide as easily when I chat, and my voice, this is who I am at this given moment. And so if you go back and listen to other stuff, you can hear the changes in my voice and changes in my story, and I've chronicled it along. So please feel free to subscribe and check it on out. Maybe leave me a review on iTunes, and reach out to our sponsor, Ready at Door. They're supporting me. I want to support them, and I think it's great. Their service is awesome, and these local restaurants are delicious. And the Ready at Door people, they take less money away from the restaurants than Skip the Dishes, which just takes the money elsewhere, right? Skip the Dishes is owned by like some European company or whatever. But anyways, join the community Facebook group if you want to share anything you're proud of, and join Josh's group, Adventure Kamloops, if you want to meet some like-minded people for social gatherings. Anyways, thanks again, and thanks for listening to Cameo, which is Kamloops' unscripted podcast. Cheers. Bye-bye.